Welcome to Have You Read It? The channel where we bring books to life, one summary at a time. Today we're talking about Alan Taylor's American Civil Wars, A Continental History, 1850 to 1873. This isn't your typical Civil War history. Taylor expands the scope beyond the United States to show how the American Civil War intertwined with conflicts in Mexico, the anxieties of British North America, soon to become Canada, and the struggles of Native peoples in the American West. The plural wars in the title signals this broader perspective. The book begins by setting the stage in 1850, a time when the United States was not yet a nation in the modern sense, but rather a union of states, each fiercely protective of its sovereignty. This emphasis on states' rights, particularly in the South, clashed with the growing desire in the North for a more unified national identity. This fundamental disagreement over the very nature of the Union is crucial to understanding the coming conflict. As Senator Clay put it, "Nothing on earth is settled under this Constitution, but the principle that everything is unsettled." Taylor highlights how territorial expansion played a critical role in exacerbating these tensions. Southerners saw expansion as a way to increase the number of slave states and counterbalance the growing power of the North. They also sought to close off escape routes for fugitive slaves. However, many also feared that an expanding union would become too large and unwieldy, ultimately leading to its disintegration. The book then introduces us to key individuals whose lives and beliefs reflect the era's defining divisions. We meet Jane McManus Casno, a female journalist who defied gender norms to become a voice for democratic expansionism and the defense of slavery, and Jane Grey Swishhelm, another female journalist but a fiery abolitionist who challenged male power structures. These women, though on opposing sides of the slavery debate, exemplify the era's intellectual ferment and the challenges to traditional gender roles. We also meet Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, two men from similar humble beginnings who would become leaders of opposing nations. Lincoln, a self-made man who rose from poverty to become a lawyer and politician, emerges as a champion of free labor and a reluctant opponent of slavery's expansion. Davis, a West Point graduate and successful planter, becomes a staunch defender of slavery as essential to Southern society and a key advocate for states' rights. Their contrasting paths and ideologies encapsulate the nation's growing divide. Taylor dedicates a chapter to fugitive slaves and the impact of their flight on both North and South. While the number of runaways was relatively small, the act of escape and the stories of suffering they shared became powerful symbols in the growing abolitionist movement. The Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, designed to help Southern slaveholders recapture runaways, further inflamed tensions by forcing Northerners to participate in the system of slavery. The impact of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin is explored as a pivotal cultural event. The novel's vivid portrayal of slavery's horrors galvanized the abolitionist movement in the North, while Southern slaveholders responded with outrage and denial. The book highlights contrasting Black perspectives on freedom and resistance, including Frederick Douglass's advocacy for abolition and integration, Martin Delany's Black nationalism, and Josiah Henson's story of escape and community building in Canada. Mary Ann Shadd, a Black activist, promoted emigration to Canada and championed Black integration there while challenging Black leaders who disagreed with her. The book also looks beyond the United States to Mexico, where a similar struggle over the nation's future was playing out. Benito Juárez, a Zapotec Indian who rose from poverty to become a lawyer and politician, emerges as a champion of liberal reforms and a staunch opponent of the conservative elites who dominated Mexican society. The book shows how the American Civil War created opportunities for both American and European intervention in Mexico. In Canada, John A. Macdonald, a Scottish immigrant and skilled politician, navigated the complex dynamics of a nation divided between French and English speakers. Macdonald recognized the threat posed by the American Civil War and worked to strengthen Canadian unity and independence. The escalating violence over slavery is explored in Kansas, where pro-slavery border ruffians clashed with anti-slavery settlers, foreshadowing the broader conflict to come. The book highlights the caning of Charles Sumner in the Senate chamber as a shocking example of the growing polarization and violence. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry further inflamed tensions, terrifying Southern slaveholders and pushing the nation closer to the brink of war. Taylor also examines how expansionist dreams in the South fueled schemes to acquire territories in the Caribbean and Central America, often through illegal filibustering expeditions. William Walker's adventures in Nicaragua and the efforts of John Quitman to conquer Cuba are presented as examples of this Southern ambition. The 1860 presidential election is presented as the breaking point, with Lincoln's victory triggering the secession of the Lower South. The attack on Fort Sumter marks the official beginning of the Civil War. Taylor moves beyond the traditional focus on battles and generals to explore the diverse experiences of soldiers, civilians, and enslaved people during the war. He highlights the hardships of military life, the impact of disease, and the psychological toll of combat. The book also explores the guerrilla warfare that raged in the border states and the increasing brutality on both sides. The role of women on the home front is examined, showing how they supported the war effort and challenged traditional gender roles. The book also shows how the war's disruptions created opportunities for enslaved people to escape and find freedom. The contraband policy, though initially designed to weaken the Confederacy rather than free the slaves, becomes a crucial step towards emancipation. The book explores how the American Civil War created a vacuum in Mexico, enabling Napoleon III to invade and install Maximilian as emperor. This French intervention is presented as a direct challenge to American republicanism and a potential threat to the Union's future. The book also shows how the Civil War influenced events in Canada, exacerbating fears of an American invasion and pushing Canadians towards Confederation. The Fenian raids, though ultimately unsuccessful, highlighted Canada's vulnerability and the need for greater unity and independence. While preoccupied with the Civil War, the Union also expanded its reach into the American West, dispossessing Native peoples and consolidating federal control. The book highlights the Sand Creek Massacre and the Dakota War as examples of the brutal conflict between settlers and Native peoples. The final chapters explore the challenges of Reconstruction, with President Johnson's lenient policies clashing with the radical Republicans' vision for a transformed South. The book highlights the Black Codes and the rise of the Ku Klux Klan as evidence of the enduring resistance to racial equality. The contested election of 1868 is presented as a pivotal moment in Reconstruction, with Grant's victory paving the way for greater federal intervention in the South. Taylor's American Civil Wars ends with an epilogue that examines the long-term consequences of the era's conflicts. The Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869, becomes a symbol of both national unity and the ongoing dispossession of Native Americans. The book highlights the persistence of racial prejudice and inequality as a defining feature of the post-Civil War era, casting doubt on the utopian dreams of many reformers. Main takeaway: the American Civil War wasn't just a war between North and South. It was a continental struggle that affected Mexico, Canada, and Native peoples in the American West. It also set the stage for America's rise as the dominant power in North America. While the war and Reconstruction led to the abolition of slavery and the strengthening of the Union, they also exposed the limits of America's liberal ideals in the face of persistent racial prejudice and inequality. Easy-to-remember heuristics. Unions matter. The fragility of unions, whether the United States or Canada, was a major theme, highlighting the inherent tensions between national unity and regional autonomy. Expansion fuels. Conflict. Both the American Civil War and the conflict in Mexico were driven in part by expansionist dreams and fears of containment. Race defines limits. Racial prejudice and inequality shaped the outcomes of both the Civil War and Reconstruction, as well as the treatment of Native peoples and Chinese immigrants in the American West. Sleeping giants awaken. Taylor reminds us that the era's unfulfilled promises of equality remained as sleeping giants, waiting for future generations to awaken them. Thanks for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss our next book dive.